We don't need you advocating for, trans vaginoplasties in prison. Piers, I am begging you on this show, stop inviting the stupidest leftists on to make the argument for trans civil rights. Let some people actually understand this stuff.
Hey guys, welcome back to my channel and back to a brand new video. In today's video, we are going to be going over a segment from the Piers Morgan show that just dropped last night, which I'm showing you guys today. And let me tell you something, this is one of my favorite segments that I've watched in a very long time, because they are discussing the aftermath of this election and how the woke, crazy progressive movement has completely ruined the Democrat Party and why they lost. And the Democrats on the panel were not ready. They were not ready. Oh, by the way, Tyrion is with us today. So without further ado, let's get into this video reaction. Roll it.
David Pakman, I want to start with you. You were very clear to me when we spoke before the election that this whole issue of transgenders in sport and so on was completely irrelevant and nobody cared. Let me remind you.
You're saying Kamala Harris and Biden have come out in support of this.
They do. They support policies which actively protect. They support policies that protect transgender athletes performing in women's sport. And I think that is madness. You're saying, well, because most of these things in this UN report were outside of America, it doesn't matter. It does matter.
What I'm saying, it's a completely contrived issue that almost no one cares about in every single opinion poll.
Wow. Well, the problem is, David, you couldn't have possibly been any more wrong, because the New York Times, the liberal Bible, did a whole piece about the ad that Trump ran, which is the Kamala's for they, them, Donald Trump's for you. They said it was one of the most effective 30-second spots in political history and may have shifted the race, according to her own side, by 2.7 percentage points in Trump's favour after people watched it. Let's take a look at the ad before I come to you.
For prisoners.
For prisoners, every transgender inmate in the prison system would have access.
Hell no, I don't want my taxpayer dollars going to that.
Kamala supports transgender sex changes in jail with our money.
Kamala even supports letting biological men compete against our girls in their sports. Kamala is for they, them. President Trump is for you.
I'm Donald J. Trump, and I approve this message.
So, look, on reflection, David, do you want to admit you were completely and hopelessly wrong about this?
So I'm going to go on a whim and say that David has no regrets. In fact, David's probably going to repackage this whole entire conversation a different way. One thing we know about liberals, especially the progressive left, like Sunny Hostin, is that they do not believe in being introspective. It's all about you.
No, in fact, in the aftermath, we figured out how dishonest you were, Piers, during that. And hopefully we can get a little bit of an opportunity. So let me lay it out.
Of course.
First of all, I went back and looked at the UN report in more detail. The UN report said nothing of the sort that you said. What you were referring to dishonestly was one footnote from an anti-trans organization making completely unsubstantiated claims. So I will wait for the apology from you. The UN report doesn't say that, but that wasn't the crux of your question. Second part of it, that ad with Kamala, I would have loved Kamala to respond to it. All she had to say was, at the time that she said that, it was Trump administration Bureau of Prisons policy that that's what's available to trans inmates when determined medically necessary. She would follow the law. You haven't said that. And then number three, Piers, on who cares about the issue, I checked Gallup survey, trans issues at the very bottom. The reality is almost no one's trans. Almost no trans people are in competitive sports, and people do not care about the issue. However, there's a lot of money made grifting about trans this and trans that, even from people on this panel. So I get why they keep bringing it up.
I'm shocked. Said no one ever. So first of all, regarding the UN report that stated that over 800 biological females had lost their medals to biological men, Piers is going to clear that up later on in this segment, and trust and believe, Piers was right. Spoiler alert. Second of all, when he talks about the ad that Donald Trump's campaign had used against Kamala Harris, where she is touting this ruling in California, which states that taxpayers would have to pay for transitions for biological men who want to be women. He says, well, that was the law back then when Donald Trump was still president. And so all Kamala Harris had to say was, I was following the law. But that's not exactly what she was doing in that ad. If you watch the actual interview from that ad, she's excited about it. She's stating, I'm the first person in California to push this, to make sure. So she was advocating for it. She was excited about it. And it was something that she was pretty much touting as a part of her campaign back in 2019. Now, one can say, oh, well, she's changed since then. But the fact still remains, she said it, she was proud of it, and she used it as a way to endorse herself when it comes to progressive policies. And those same progressive policies is what majority of Americans have turned away from. So you can't really distance her from that when she herself is on camera and on tape excited about that policy. Lastly, when he says that there are so few people who are trans, I actually agree with him. I think the numbers are like 0.1% are actually trans in this country. But here's the thing, for such a small, tiny population, why is it that that agenda is everywhere in school? I mean, we're talking about children as young as 4 and 5 are learning about non-binary. Kids in kindergarten are learning about non-binary and gender dysphoria at that age.
Are you a boy or a girl? And Nash answers, I'm just a kid.
But kids can be boys or...
They can be boys or girls. Yeah.
Or maybe non-binary.
Yeah.
It was just like non-binary, yeah. That's just something that we know. And this is something, I mean, it's like, they're 4 and 5 years old.
I think it was a huge testament to how much we've been talking about it in the classroom that you never mentioned the term non-binary. It was a child who brought that up because it's constantly in conversation.
Elementary school, junior high school, you've got trans flags everywhere. Okay, you've got different pronouns. So my question to him would be, for such a small, tiny group that we both agree on is so tiny, why is it that that small, tiny group seems to be getting all of the attention when it comes to the progressive movement, specifically for children? Why? Make no mistakes about it. Being transgender is a disorder. Why are we glorifying it? Why are we magnifying it and making it something that kids should be proud of? It's a disorder. Treat it as such. But the left is not doing that.
Ben, you burst out laughing then. Would you like to take the first shot back?
Yeah, number one, I've never made any money off the issue, and I doubt hardly anyone that I know, if you want to talk about how few there are making money off trans issues, but that was a very interesting play there. I don't think it's a good one, but we'll move on from that to the second point.
If that's what he meant.
Yeah, Vanderbilt, for example, they said, and I quote, you better get on board as a doctor, and if you don't with trans surgeries, you're out of here. They said that on tape and got busted. Then they said that every kid that we can bring in.
Question.
I'm answering the question, and you may have heard a different question than I did, so you can calm down and let me finish.
Apparently.
You look at what they said at Vanderbilt. They said over $1 million is what each kid is worth if we can hurry up and get them these surgeries, because they're going to be on drugs the rest of their life. And we're going to be able to own them for the rest of their life financially, and we can make millions off the kids. They said that at Vanderbilt University.
In case you guys are wondering, I did a full video on this last year exposing Vanderbilt University and their doctors, talking about how profitable it is to do transitioning surgeries on children and how profitable it is to have kids start gender-affirming care. I will have a link to the original video in my description as well as on the screen.
Now, back to the bigger point here about the election. The reason why this was an issue in the election is because Democrats made it an issue. They wanted to force little girls to be in locker rooms with grown men. They wanted to force women off the podium and allow men
like Mark
on
Robinson,
the podium.
huh?
Riley Gaines is a great example of this. Maybe you should listen, and then you'll understand why you got your ass kicked in the last presidential election and nationwide. Actually, I'm glad you guys aren't listening, because you don't listen to the damn people. And the people said this was an issue. And then you mocked them and you act like it's not an issue when in fact it is an issue. So keep acting like you know what's going on in this country when the reality is this was an important issue to voters. It was an important issue to mothers. It was an important issue to moms that have girls in sports. It was a really important issue to men and dads that have young girls in sports. And so when you act like you guys weren't trying to do this and you weren't mandating that men compete with women and men beat women in sports and you weren't protecting young girls in the locker room, this is what you get. you get the American people and the silent majority that said no more of this radical and extreme position, and they showed up on election day. And if you would have listened to the American people, you would have understood this issue mattered to moms and dads, including liberals and undecideds, and that's why you lost.
I've been saying this non-freaking stop even before the election. Democrats have lost their ever-loving minds because of issues like this, and now they're reaping what they sowed.
Here's the reality is that this wasn't an issue except for the fact that Republicans made it an issue. There was almost a $250 million disinformation campaign surrounding the issue of gender reassignment surgeries among trans inmates. This is a position that Kamala Harris has been virtually silent on for over the last 5 years, but they took a cherry-picked a quote from 2019, shoehorned it into the narrative.
She said it.
Put a ton of money from a very well-funded right-wing media ecosystem behind it and convinced Americans that, again, an issue that Kamala Harris didn't say a word about in this election cycle is somehow the most important issue in this election cycle.
I mean, the gaslighting is A1. I will give them that. It is A-freaking-1. So you're trying to tell me that it's all in our heads? That this whole trans movement is in our heads? That Leah Thomas was a figment of our imagination? That stories about kids being put on Lupron and medical castration that they give to pedophiles was all in our heads? That children aren't being taught this garbage in schools? All in our heads? That men weren't allowed to be in women's bathrooms and locker rooms with their junk hanging out? That wasn't happening? That this agenda isn't happening in schools? Teachers aren't in schools right now talking about their pronouns and talking about their sexuality and their gender identity? That's all in our heads?
Starting a new job on Monday, and it's a teaching job, so the kids are going to call me either Mr. or Mrs. Jamie. It depends on what I want, but I, as a non-binary being, I don't know what to pick. I feel like Mrs. would be easier for the kids, but Mr. makes me feel better, but I also kind of want to try mix, but I don't know if the kids can do that. I don't. And then what do they do when they ask me if I'm a boy or a girl? I'm not.
If it's all in our heads, then tell me, why is it that there are so many children now coming out of junior high school that now identify as non-binary and trans? Kids who never even knew what that term meant until they went to school. And don't get me started on the medical terminology that has changed, where now you can't say as a doctor, mother. That's now offensive. You must say a birthing person. You can't say period any longer, because that's also offensive. It's now good old menstruator. You can't say breastfeeding, chest feeders. I mean, the list goes on. So spare me the garbage about how this is all just Republicans and people on the right exaggerating. It's not really happening. It is happening. And it's only getting worse.
You say disinformation. Are you denying she said what we all heard her say?
No, but I am denying that it's her position, or that this was her position in the 2024 election cycle. Some comment that she has walked away from 5 years ago.
If it wasn't her position back then why was she so excited to talk about it in that interview?
Before she was vice president does not create her position now. But nobody would know that. Nobody would know that. If I could just have one question.
Simple question for you.
Ben, if I could just have 1 second to finish my I know that you want to shoehorn it in, but you're going to have to be quiet until I finish my comments.
If you say,
if there wasn't such a well-funded effort, I could do the same thing, bro. I can just talk over you the whole time as well.
I'm asking you a genuine question about members of Congress. Name any Republicans that had trans flags in front of their offices, and then tell me how many Democrats had trans flags in the halls of Congress. You cannot tell me this wasn't an issue when there were congressmen and senators that if you walk the halls of Congress had trans flags up. They made it an issue. They made it an issue, man.
Do you just want to yell, or do you want to actually have a conversation? Because I know that you love the sound of your voice. But the fact that somebody no, you just want to yell. Like, this is, it's great that you have your own show. You can do that into a camera with nobody interrupting you the whole time. The fact that somebody could acknowledge the humanity of trans people is not the same as the issue of gender reassignment surgeries for trans inmates.
Okay, but Davis said in the beginning of this segment that the trans population is so incredibly tiny. So tell me, for such a tiny population, why are members in Congress having trans flags everywhere? As if it's half the population. I'll tell you why. Because they are using that as a platform to push an agenda. Otherwise, why have those flags everywhere? Again, small population, yet their representation is everywhere, even in the halls of Congress. Think about that for a second.
I actually want to bring in an extra guest, the former Democratic congressional candidate, Brianna Wu, who is also a trans woman. Brianna, welcome to Uncensored. I can't think of anyone better qualified, given you're the only trans member of the panel now, to respond to what our two liberal friends are saying.
David, I love your show. I consider you a friend. You and the Democrats are completely wrong about what trans people need. We don't need you advocating for, trans vaginoplasties in prison. We need to retreat back to the basics of what we need, which is HRT and healthcare. And the problem is the Democrats have been captured by this fringe left that's redefined what trans means to all this non-binary nonsense and all this stuff that has nothing to do with how we got our rights in the first place. Ben, you can appreciate this. I was the first trans person to ever transition at Ole Miss, our alma mater. That was very, very difficult. It was 20 years ago, toddy. And the thing is, the way I got equality and got people to respect me in Mississippi was not by screaming at them or lecturing them about my pronouns. It was getting them to see my humanity. This is something trans people have just completely lost. And the problem is the Democratic Party is unwilling to call out these bad actors. And because of this, we are having a conversation that does not serve trans people. Piers, I am begging you on this show, stop inviting these stupidest leftists on to make the argument for trans civil rights. Let some people actually understand this stuff. And Dave is laughing because you understand integration as a gay man. You know exactly what I'm talking about. You've done the same playbook your whole career.
Well,
this works. This is how you
off,
got
I'm only gay. I'm only gay starting at 10 p.m. What time is it? We'll have to check on that. But actually, you're completely right. Brianna, you're completely right. What's happening with the left is that these saviors, these progressive warriors that you see in these boxes here, think that they know more about these people than they know about themselves.
Absolutely ridiculous.
And by the way, this has nothing to do with a well-funded evil money machine that the Republicans were doing. There's something called boys and girls. And
Ruben's
they are
the right
different.
guy to talk about
and
that,
most
isn't
parents, he? And most parents actually want to defend their daughters and don't want them to have the crap kicked out of them by boys. And they don't want them to be playing boys in soccer or any of these other things. That is a defense of girls.
Wow. I'm in shock. An actual trans person who isn't batshit crazy. I love when Brianna said, please, Piers, stop inviting these stupid leftists to advocate for trans people because they're not it. And for God's sake, stop calling non-binary people trans because they're not trans. Say it again for the people in the back.
If someone, as an adult, 18, 21, we can discuss the age, wants to dress how they want, have any surgeries, take whatever drugs, do whatever they want with their body, most people, even Republicans, don't object to that. And I have no problem referring to Brianna as she, because I can clearly sense she would treat me with respect and I'll treat her with respect. And it's a two-way street rather than pandering and bowing to a bunch of people that could not give a crap about anybody else.
All right, now it's time for Piers to set David straight on that whole UN report about trans women stealing medals from biological females. Roll it.
Let me bring in David Patton again, because you were very quick when I asked how you felt about being so wrong about this to accuse me of being misleading, disinformation, misconstruing a United Nations report. And we found, hang on, we found the United Nations report. And it's not a footnote, as you said, it's page 5 of the report. It says, and I quote, the United Nations says nearly 900 biological females have fallen short of the podium because they were beaten out by trans athletes. The findings were compiled by the UN's Rapporteur on Violence Against Women, entitled Violence Against Women and Girls in Sport. The report said more than 600 athletes didn't medal in more than 400 competitions in 29 different sports, totaling over 890 medals. The replacement of the female sports category with a mixed sex category has resulted in an increasing number of female athletes losing opportunities, including medals, when competing against males, the report said. So, David, again, would you like to now apologise for being not only wrong about this being an election issue, but being wrong about your correction when I asked you if you were sorry for being wrong?
Look at the underlying source, Piers.
I mean, my God. He literally said in the beginning of the segment, it was just a footnote. It wasn't even an actual thing. And here Piers is showing him verbatim exactly what the actual UN findings said, and it was much longer than just a footnote. And now his response is, well, what's the source? Who's the source?
There's a reason that everyone hates progressives, and the reason that everyone hates progressives, it's not just that they're wrong about all of the issues and they will lie and their only real goal is power. It's because they're also smug elitists. And Pac-Man, I did see online the other day, you were crying because your audience is purging you and you're running out of subscribers and you're in a doom loop. And the reason is no one gives, Piers, pardon me, a shit about this woke bullshit anymore. We've had it.
Standing ovation. Yes, David. Yes. We're tired of it.
Here's the problem with what you're saying is it's Democrats that advocated and mandate that women have to compete with men in sports. There was no Republican doing that. And you say like it didn't exist now. You say that it's not happening where they're actually doing transitional surgeries to very young children. It's not Republicans that are doing that. Republicans are passing laws to protect kids under 18 from body mutilation. You say that it's the NCAA that's not allowing athletes or the Olympic Committee in boxing at the Olympics. We all watched it, men beating the hell out of women. And then you say it's not an issue of the left. If it's not the left that's doing this, then who is it? Because it sure as hell isn't the right. Yeah. And this is why I go back to the point. You lose elections when you lie to the American people to their face and you say, we're not doing this, when everybody sees you're doing it.
And the problem is the left, like respectfully, trans people don't have a voice on the left. So you're listening to this non-binary, communist, Hamas-supporting fringe, and they're the ones talking to Kamala and saying like, look, unless you stand with like vaginoplasty in prison, you're a transphobe. So of course the entire party is going along with that.
I mean, not much to say with that. They are definitely killing it in this conversation. But watch this next segment where Brian tries to be smug and tries to say that nobody's talking about the trans issue. You're not seeing this on liberal news media. It's only you, Piers. It's only the right wing. Watch how well that plays out.
The only time that I have heard or debated this issue is literally with you and other people who accept right-wing framing on this issue. So the only people who are continuing to perpetuate this as an issue, it is right-wing framing because
I'm not right-wing, so how can it be right-wing framing?
We're not talking about it. Again, the only time I hear about it, you can watch MSNBC, you can watch communist, Marxist, MSNBC all day long. You will not hear this issue. The only reason that it's put into the zeitgeist on a daily basis.
A few minutes later.
Man and the guy in the hoodie.
Right there.
Let's try it this way.
Right there on my phone. MSNBC. There's LGBTQ in breaking news right now on MSNBC. Like, I love calling out the BS. It's right there, MSNBC on my phone.
Dude,
I don't know what that is.
It must be for so easy to find.
There's a woman and wants to fight against a female biological actual woman. Brian, would you be happy with that?
No, of course.
What are you showing us?
As if this is what Democrats care about. As if this is what Democrats are talking about.
Yeah. What a second Trump presidency would mean for trans people like me. Headline MSNBC as we speak. But MSNBC never talks about trans issues at all. Yeah, there it is.
Hang on. I have a phone too, and it has MSNBC on it. Yes. Democrats would get nothing for throwing trans Americans under the bus. Where did we get this thing? This is incredible.
Look, you guys can think it's like some gotcha to that MS acknowledges that MS acknowledges the existence.
That was my favorite moment in that entire segment. That moment right there. How could you be stupid enough to say that MSNBC, or as I call them, MSDNC, isn't pushing the trans agenda and the progressive left agenda 24/7 on that station? Are you freaking kidding me? That was too easy. That was too easy. I almost feel bad for him. I want to end this video here where Dave Rubin talks to Brianna, who's the trans person on the panel, and says something that is so unbelievably true. Listen to this.
The moral of the story, I think, for the progressives is stop being so authoritarian and hysterical and better than everybody, because what you've done is you've taken all of the good liberals of America, of which there are many, and most of them are now Republicans, or at least voting for Republicans. And I would like to say to Brianna, who I've enjoyed watching a bit of her evolution here, is that what I think you're going to find over the next year or two is that consistently you are going to have some differences with people on the right, but they are going to welcome welcome you. They are going to treat you with respect. They're going to agree to disagree, and you're going to have rich conversations and find an awful lot of agreement where you thought there would only be scorched earth. And on the other side of it, you're going to find exactly what you have found over the course of this panel. And I think very quickly that will change your party affiliation. But maybe I'm wrong, because I do get some predictions wrong. We'll see.
Perfectly said, Dave. Perfectly said. Let me know in the comments down below what you think of this video. What were your thoughts of this conversation? To me, it was entertaining and also so fulfilling at the same time. So fulfilling. If you enjoy my content, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Don't forget to hit the notification bell so you know when I post a brand new video. Until next time, Tyrion, say you're out. Yeah, he's done.